Thomas remained perfectly still as Rebecca's footsteps grew closer. The little girl in the pantry had stopped chewing, her entire body rigid with terror. Through the crack in the door, Thomas could see her press herself against the shelves, making herself as small as possible. The sandwich she had been eating was clutched tightly in both hands, pressed against her chest like a precious treasure she refused to surrender. Rebecca walked into the kitchen, humming softly to herself as she carried a basket of cleaning supplies. She was a thin woman in her early 30s, with the same blonde hair as the hidden child. Her face looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and endless worry. She wore a simple blue uniform dress that Thomas provided for his household staff, though he noticed now how it seemed to hang more loosely than it had a month ago. Thomas cleared his throat, and Rebecca jumped, nearly dropping her basket. Her hand flew to her chest as she turned to face him, her expression cycling rapidly through surprise, confusion, and then something that looked very much like Faye. "Mr. Bennet," she said, her voice slightly breathless. "I didn't hear you come in. I thought you were at your afternoon meeting." "The meeting ended early," Thomas said carefully. He watched her face, looking for signs of the desperation he had just witnessed in the pantry. "Rebecca, is there something you need to tell me?" The color drained from her face. Her eyes darted involuntarily toward the pantry door, and in that moment, Thomas knew with certainty that she was aware of the child hiding there. This was not the first time. This had been happening, perhaps for days or weeks, right under his nose. I don't understand what you mean," Rebecca stammered, but her hands were shaking so badly that she had to set down the basket. "Is there a problem with my work? Have I done something wrong?" From inside the pantry came the smallest sound. A hiccup. The kind of sound a child makes when trying desperately not to cry. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears instantly, and she moved toward the pantry door, her body language that of a mother protecting her young. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please don't call the police. She's just hungry. We're just so hungry." Thomas felt his throat tighten. In all his years of wealth, of business negotiations and corporate decisions, he had never felt as helpless as he did in this moment. This woman, who had cleaned his home faithfully for 3 years, who had never asked for anything extra, who had always smiled and done her work with quiet dignity, was begging him not to report her starving child. "How long?" Thomas asked gently. "How long has your daughter been coming here?" Rebecca's face crumpled. She sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. 2 weeks, she managed to say between gasps. "I lost my childcare. I couldn't afford it anymore. I had to bring Sophie with me, but I made her promise to stay hidden. I never meant for her to take food. I bring lunch for both of us, but today I forgot it at home. We had nothing for breakfast either." Thomas walked slowly to the pantry door and pulled it open fully. The little girl, Sophie, looked up at him with those haunting blue eyes, still clutching the half-eaten sandwich. She looked so small, so fragile, and so terribly afraid. But there was something else in her expression too. A fierce, stubborn determination. She was not going to apologize for eating. She was hungry, and hunger made its own rules. "Hello, Sophie," Thomas said softly, crouching down to her level. "My name is Thomas. That sandwich you are eating belonged to me, and I want you to know something important. You can have it. All of it. And when you are done with that one, you can have another." Sophie stared at Thomas for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether this was some kind of trick. Her grip on the sandwich loosened slightly, but she did not move from her position pressed against the pantry shelves. Behind him, Thomas could hear Rebecca's quiet crying, the sound of a woman who had reached the end of her strength. "Mom." Sophie's voice was small and uncertain. "Is he going to make us leave?" Thomas turned to Rebecca, who was now standing, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She walked over to her daughter and knelt beside her, wrapping one arm around Sophie's shoulders. "I don't know, baby," Rebecca said honestly. "Mr. Bennet has every right to fire me and ask us to leave. We broke the rules." Thomas stood and walked back to the kitchen table, pulling out a chair and sitting down. He gestured to the other chairs. "Please, both of you, sit with me. Let's talk about this properly." Rebecca helped Sophie out of the pantry, and they both sat at the table across from Thomas. Sophie had finished the sandwich during the exchange, and Thomas noticed she kept glancing at the fruit bowl in the center of the table. Without a word, he pushed the bowl toward her. She took an apple and bit into it hungrily. "Rebecca," Thomas began, keeping his voice calm and even. "I need you to tell me everything. Not just about the last 2 weeks. Tell me about your situation. Why are you struggling?" Rebecca took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "It started about 6 months ago. Sophie's asthma got worse. The medication she needs is expensive, even with my insurance. I've been paying for it, but it meant cutting back on everything else. Food, utilities. Then 2 months ago, my landlord raised my rent. I couldn't afford it and the medicine and childcare. I had to choose." She looked at her daughter, her eyes filled with pain. "I chose the medicine. Sophie needs it to breathe. But that meant I lost my apartment. We've been staying with a friend, sleeping on her couch, but she can only let us stay another week. And the childcare center I was using, they wouldn't let me fall behind on payments. So I had no choice but to bring Sophie here." Thomas listened carefully, his mind already working through solutions. "What about Sophie's father? Does he provide any support?" Rebecca's jaw tightened. "He left when Sophie was 2. I haven't heard from him in years. No child support. No contact. Nothing. It's just been the 2 of us." Sophie had finished the apple and was now eating a banana, her small face showing the first signs of color. Thomas noted that despite her hunger, she had decent table manners. She was careful not to make a mess, and she chewed slowly now that she realized more food would be available. "How much do you make working for me?" Thomas asked. Rebecca named a figure that made Thomas wince internally. It was the standard rate for domestic help in Boston, but it was nowhere near enough for a single mother to support herself and a child in this expensive city. He had never thought to ask about her personal situation before. She had always seemed fine, always smiled, always did her work. He had been blind to her struggle. "That's not enough," Thomas said bluntly. "That's not nearly enough for what you are dealing with." Rebecca's face flushed. "I'm grateful for the work, Mr. Bennett. I'm not complaining. I just need to figure things out." "You can't figure out an impossible situation," Thomas said. "The math doesn't work. You can't afford rent, medicine, food, and childcare on that salary. Not in Boston. Not anywhere." Rebecca looked down at her hands. "I know. I've been looking for a second job, but I can't do that and still work here. And I need this job. It's steady. The hours are good. I just need to find cheaper housing, maybe outside the city. I'll figure it out." Thomas shook his head. "What if I told you that you don't have to figure it out alone? What if I told you that I want to help?" Rebecca's head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise and suspicion. "Help how?" "I have a guest house on the property," Thomas said. 3 bedrooms, fully furnished. It's been empty for 2 years. You and Sophie could live there. No rent." Rebecca opened her mouth to protest, but Thomas held up his hand. "Let me finish. Your salary will triple, effective immediately. I'll also cover Sophie's medical expenses, including her asthma medication. And during the day, while you work, Sophie can stay in the main house. I have a library, a playroom that hasn't been used in years. She can do her homework there, read, play, whatever she needs." Tears were streaming down Rebecca's face again, but these were different tears. "Why would you do this? You don't even know us." Thomas looked at Sophie, who was watching him with those blue eyes that reminded him so much of his own lost daughter. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything that matters," he said quietly. "And I know that sometimes, when we are given the power to help, we have a responsibility to do so. You are a good mother, Rebecca. You are fighting for your daughter. Let me help you win that fight." Rebecca sat in silence, processing Thomas's words. Sophie had stopped eating and was looking back and forth between her mother and this stranger who had just offered them something that seemed too good to be true. Years of struggle had taught Rebecca to be cautious of generosity that came without strings attached. "Mr. Bennett," Rebecca said slowly, "I appreciate what you are offering, I really do. But I need to understand why. People don't just give away free housing and triple someone's salary. What do you expect from me in return?" Thomas appreciated her directness. It spoke to her character that even in a desperate situation, she wanted to understand the terms clearly. "That's a fair question," he said. "The truth is, I'm not just doing this out of kindness, though I hope I'm kind. I'm doing it because I see something in your daughter that reminds me of my own child." He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the manicured grounds of his Boston estate. "My daughter, Caroline, died 3 years ago. She was 10 years old. Leukemia. For 2 years, we've fought it with every treatment, every experimental drug, every prayer. In the end, nothing worked. She died in my arms, asking me if I would help other kids who were sick and scared." Rebecca's expression softened, and Sophie climbed down from her chair, walking over to Thomas. She tugged gently on his sleeve. "I'm sorry your little girl died," she said simply. "That's really sad." Thomas looked down at her, and for the first time in 3 years, he felt something other than grief when thinking about Caroline. He felt purpose. "Thank you, Sophie. It is sad. But seeing you today, hiding in my pantry because you were hungry, it reminded me that I have the power to make sure other children don't have to suffer. Your mother has been working hard to take care of you, and she shouldn't have to do it alone." He turned back to Rebecca. "What I expect from you is simple. Continue doing the work you have been doing. You are an excellent employee. But more than that, I expect you to let Sophie be a child again. Let her go to a good school. Let her have regular meals. Let her not have to worry about whether her mother can afford her medicine. Can you do that?" Rebecca stood, walking over to where Sophie stood near Thomas. She placed both hands on her daughter's shoulders and looked Thomas directly in the eye. "If I accept this, I want to be clear about something. I'm not a charity case. I'll work harder than I ever have. I'll earn every bit of what you are offering. And someday, when I'm on my feet, I'll pay it forward to someone else who needs help." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Thomas said, extending his hand. "Do we have an agreement?" Rebecca hesitated for only a moment before shaking his hand firmly. "We have an agreement. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. You have no idea what this means to us." "Call me Thomas," he said. "If you are going to be living on the property, we should be less formal. And I think I have some idea of what this means. Now, let's get you both settled in the guest house. But first, let's have a proper meal. I'm going to order food, and we're all going to eat together." Over the next few hours, Thomas arranged for a moving company to collect Rebecca and Sophie's few belongings from their friend's apartment. He called his lawyer to draft a new employment contract for Rebecca with the increased salary and benefits. He contacted a local school with an excellent reputation and arranged for Sophie to start the following week, with all fees covered. But more importantly, he sat with them in his kitchen and ate pizza while Sophie told him about her favorite subjects in school and her dream of becoming an artist someday. He learned that Rebecca loved reading mystery novels when she had time, which was almost never. He discovered that Sophie had never been to a museum or a movie theater because they could not afford such luxuries. "Well," Thomas said, wiping pizza sauce from his chin, "we'll have to fix that. Sophie, how would you like to go to the Museum of Fine Arts this weekend? They have an excellent children's program." Sophie's face lit up with pure joy. "Really? Could we? Mom, can we?" Rebecca smiled, and Thomas realized it was the first genuine, unguarded smile he had ever seen on her face. "If Thomas is inviting us, then yes, we can go." By evening, Rebecca and Sophie were moved into the guest house. It was a charming cottage-style building with a bright blue door located about 50 yards from the main house. The interior was clean and modern, with large windows that let in plenty of natural light. There were 2 bedrooms upstairs and 1 on the main floor, along with a full kitchen and a cozy living room. Sophie ran from room to room, her excitement palpable. "Mom, look. I have my own room. And there's a window seat. Can I put my drawings on the walls?" "Of course you can, baby," Rebecca said, her voice thick with emotion. She turned to Thomas, who stood in the doorway. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Thomas said. "Now get some rest. Tomorrow is a new beginning for all of us." The first week in the guest house passed like a dream for Rebecca and Sophie. Every morning, Rebecca would wake up in a real bed, in a warm room, without the anxiety of wondering where they would be sleeping next month. Sophie would bounce into her room, already dressed for the day, full of energy and excitement about what new things she might discover on the property. Thomas had arranged for Sophie to start at Brookline Academy, a private school known for its excellent arts program and small class sizes. On her first day, Rebecca walked her to the school entrance, her heart full of gratitude and hope. Sophie wore a new green dress that Thomas had insisted on buying, along with a backpack full of fresh school supplies. "You're going to do great," Rebecca told her daughter, smoothing down her hair. "Remember, if you need me, the school has my new cell phone number." Thomas had provided Rebecca with a smartphone, explaining that she needed reliable communication now that she was managing his household. It was another small gift that made an enormous difference in their lives. Sophie hugged her mother tightly. "I'll make you proud, Mom. And I'll make Thomas proud too." Watching her daughter walk into the school building, Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time in years, Sophie looked like what she was, just a regular 8-year-old girl going to school without the weight of adult worries on her small shoulders. Back at the estate, Rebecca threw herself into her work with renewed dedication. She had always been thorough, but now she paid attention to details she had previously overlooked. She noticed that Thomas rarely ate proper meals, often surviving on coffee and takeout. She began preparing fresh lunches for him, making sure he ate vegetables and proteins that would keep his energy up during his long workdays. Thomas, for his part, began spending more time at home. He had always been a workaholic, staying at the office late into the evening, but now he found himself leaving earlier, wanting to be there when Sophie came home from school. He would sit with her in the library while she did her homework, occasionally helping with math problems or reading assignments. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after they moved in, Thomas found Sophie in the sunroom, surrounded by papers and colored pencils. She was drawing with intense concentration, her tongue poking out slightly as she worked. "What are you creating?" Thomas asked, settling into a chair nearby. Sophie looked up, her face bright with enthusiasm. "I'm drawing our house. See, that's the guest house where Mom and I live, and that's the big house where you live, and that's the garden in between. But I'm making it all colorful, with lots of flowers and birds." Thomas studied the drawing. For a child her age, it showed remarkable attention to detail and a natural sense of composition. The houses were recognizable, and she had captured the peaceful feeling of the estate. "This is really good, Sophie," Thomas said honestly. "Have you always liked to draw?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "It's my favorite thing. When Mom and I didn't have much food, or when I was scared about where we would live, I would draw pictures of happy places. Places where we had a home and enough to eat. I guess I was drawing this place before I even knew it existed." The simple statement hit Thomas with unexpected force. While he had been living in luxury, this child had been dreaming of basic security. "Would you like to take art classes?" he asked. "Real classes, with a professional teacher." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Could I? That would be amazing." "Consider it done," Thomas said. "I'll find the best children's art instructor in Boston." That evening, Thomas sat with Rebecca in the kitchen after Sophie had gone to bed. They had fallen into a comfortable routine of sharing tea and conversation at the end of each day, discussing Sophie's progress and any household matters that needed attention. "She's talented," Thomas said, showing Rebecca the drawing Sophie had made. "Really talented. I'm going to arrange for art lessons." Rebecca looked at the drawing, her expression soft with love. "She's always been artistic. I used to feel guilty that I couldn't afford to nurture that talent. When other kids were taking ballet or music lessons, Sophie was just drawing on scrap paper with whatever pencils I could find." "Those days are over," Thomas said firmly. "She has everything she needs now. And so do you. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that." Rebecca looked up, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all," Thomas assured her. "Actually, I've been thinking about expanding my charitable foundation. I've donated money to various causes over the years, but it's always felt impersonal. Write a check, get a thank you letter, never see the direct impact. I want to do something more hands-on." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I was thinking about starting a program to help single parents, specifically those who are struggling to make ends meet despite working hard. food assistance, childcare support, job training, help with housing. I want to create a safety net for people in the situation you are in. Rebecca set down her teacup carefully. That sounds wonderful. How can I help? I was hoping you would ask, Thomas said with a smile. I want you to help me run it. You understand the struggles these families face because you have lived it. You know what kind of help actually makes a difference. Would you be interested in taking on that role, in addition to managing the household? Rebecca was quiet for a moment, processing the offer. You want me to help run a charitable foundation? Thomas, I didn't even finish college. I've been a maid, a waitress, a grocery store clerk. I don't have experience in non-profit management. But you have something more valuable, Thomas said. You have empathy, you have integrity, and you have first-hand knowledge. We can hire people with management experience. What we can't hire is someone who genuinely understands and cares about the people we're trying to help. That someone is you. Rebecca felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she had almost forgotten. It was hope, real and tangible. I would be honored, she said softly. 3 months passed, and the transformation in the Hayes family was remarkable. Sophie thrived at Brookline Academy, making friends and excelling in her classes. Her art teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had called Rebecca twice to rave about Sophie's natural talent and creative vision. Sophie's asthma was under control with proper medication and regular doctor visits, something Rebecca no longer had to stress about. Rebecca had thrown herself into learning about non-profit management, taking online courses in the evenings and meeting with Thomas's business advisors. Together, they had created Hope Rising Foundation, dedicated to helping single parents achieve stability and independence. The foundation's office was located in downtown Boston, in an accessible building near public transportation. One rainy Tuesday morning, Rebecca and Thomas sat in the foundation office, reviewing applications from families seeking assistance. Each story was heartbreaking in its own way. Single mothers working multiple jobs, but still falling behind on rent. Fathers trying to care for children while managing chronic illnesses. Families one crisis away from homelessness. This one, Rebecca said, pointing to an application from a woman named Maria Rodriguez. She's working as a nursing assistant, which means she's helping other people all day, but she can't afford childcare for her own kids. She's been leaving her 10-year-old in charge of her 6-year-old. That's exactly the kind of situation where we can make a difference. Thomas read the application carefully. Approved. Let's get her set up with childcare assistance and see if we can help her get into an LPN program. Better job, better future. Rebecca made a note in the file. This was their 4th week of operation, and they had already helped 12 families. But she wanted to do more. Thomas, I've been thinking. What if we created a community center? A place where single parents could come for support, not just financial assistance but emotional support too. Parenting classes, job workshops, maybe even counseling services. A place where they don't feel alone. Thomas looked up from the applications, his eyes bright with interest. That's a great idea. Where would we locate it? I was thinking somewhere in Dorchester or Roxbury, Rebecca said. Neighborhoods where the need is greatest. We could rent space in an existing building, or if you're feeling ambitious, we could buy a property and renovate it. Let's do it right, Thomas said. Buy a property, make it warm and welcoming. A place that feels like hope, not charity. Can you start looking at options? Rebecca nodded, feeling a surge of purpose. Her life had changed so dramatically in just a few months that sometimes she had to pinch herself to believe it was real. She had gone from hiding in fear to building something meaningful, from barely surviving to helping others thrive. That evening, Sophie had exciting news of her own. She burst through the door of the guest house, her backpack flying off her shoulders as she ran to her mother. Mom, guess what? There's going to be an art show at school, and Mrs. Patterson wants to include my paintings. Real paintings on real canvases that Thomas helped me buy. She said some of them might even sell, and the money goes to help kids in other countries get art supplies. Rebecca hugged her daughter tightly. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Sophie pulled back, her face serious. Mrs. Patterson asked me what inspired my paintings. I told her about how we used to struggle and how Thomas helped us. She said that's a story of hope, and hope is what makes the best art. Is that true? Yes, baby, Rebecca said, smoothing her daughter's hair. Hope is what makes the best everything. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Rebecca walked over to the main house. She found Thomas in his study, reviewing contracts. He looked up when she knocked softly on the open door. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. "Always," Thomas said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "What's on your mind?" Rebecca sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "I wanted to thank you. Not just for what you've done for Sophie and me, though that would be enough for a lifetime of gratitude. But thank you for giving me a purpose. Before, I was just surviving, just trying to get through each day. Now, I'm building something. I'm helping people. I feel like I matter." Thomas set down his pen and looked at her with an expression she had learned to recognize over these months, warm and genuine. "Rebecca, you always mattered. The circumstances of your life didn't diminish your worth. They just made it harder for you to see it. I'm just glad I could provide the opportunity for you to shine. Because that's what you're doing. You're shining. What would you do if given a second chance at life? Would you pay it forward like Rebecca is doing? Subscribe and drop a comment about how you would help others if given the opportunity." Rebecca felt tears well up but blinked them back. "I want to ask you something. When we open the community center, I'd like to start a support group for single parents. A place where they can talk honestly about their struggles without judgment. I know what it's like to feel alone in this, to think you're the only one who can't make it work. If I had found a community like that before I met you, maybe I wouldn't have ended up in such a desperate situation." "That's an excellent idea," Thomas said. "What else do you envision?" Rebecca leaned forward, her passion evident in her voice. "Job training programs. Not just any jobs," Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "It's my favorite thing. When Mom and I didn't have much food, or when I was scared about where we would live, I would draw pictures of happy places. Places where we had a home and enough to eat. I guess I was drawing this place before I even knew it existed." The simple statement hit Thomas with unexpected force. While he had been living in luxury, this child had been dreaming of basic security. "Would you like to take art classes?" he asked. "Real classes, with a professional teacher." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Could I? That would be amazing." "Consider it done," Thomas said. "I'll find the best children's art instructor in Boston." That evening, Thomas sat with Rebecca in the kitchen after Sophie had gone to bed. They had fallen into a comfortable routine of sharing tea and conversation at the end of each day, discussing Sophie's progress and any household matters that needed attention. "She's talented," Thomas said, showing Rebecca the drawing Sophie had made. "Really talented. I'm going to arrange for art lessons." Rebecca looked at the drawing, her expression soft with love. "She's always been artistic. I used to feel guilty that I couldn't afford to nurture that talent. When other kids were taking ballet or music lessons, Sophie was just drawing on scrap paper with whatever pencils I could find." "Those days are over," Thomas said firmly. "She has everything she needs now. And so do you. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that." Rebecca looked up, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all," Thomas assured her. "Actually, I've been thinking about expanding my charitable foundation. I've donated money to various causes over the years, but it's always felt impersonal. Write a check, get a thank you letter, never see the direct impact. I want to do something more hands-on." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I was thinking about starting a program to help single parents, specifically those who are struggling to make ends meet despite working hard. Food assistance, childcare support, job training, help with housing. I want to create a safety net for people in the situation you are in." Rebecca set down her teacup carefully. "That sounds wonderful. How can I help?" "I was hoping you would ask," Thomas said with a smile. "I want you to help me run it. You understand the struggles these families face because you have lived it. You know what kind of help actually makes a difference. Would you be interested in taking on that role, in addition to managing the household?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment, processing the offer. "You want me to help run a charitable foundation? Thomas, I didn't even finish college. I've been a maid, a waitress, a grocery store clerk. I don't have experience in non-profit management. But you have something more valuable, Thomas said. You have empathy, you have integrity, and you have first-hand knowledge. We can hire people with management experience. What we can't hire is someone who genuinely understands and cares about the people we're trying to help. That someone is you. Rebecca felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she had almost forgotten. It was hope, real and tangible. I would be honored, she said softly. 3 months passed, and the transformation in the Hayes family was remarkable. Sophie thrived at Brookline Academy, making friends and excelling in her classes. Her art teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had called Rebecca twice to rave about Sophie's natural talent and creative vision. Sophie's asthma was under control with proper medication and regular doctor visits, something Rebecca no longer had to stress about. Rebecca had thrown herself into learning about nonprofit management, taking online courses in the evenings and meeting with Thomas's business advisors. Together, they had created Hope Rising Foundation, dedicated to helping single parents achieve stability and independence. The foundation's office was located in downtown Boston, in an accessible building near public transportation. One rainy Tuesday morning, Rebecca and Thomas sat in the foundation office, reviewing applications from families seeking assistance. Each story was heartbreaking in its own way. Single mothers working multiple jobs but still falling behind on rent, fathers trying to care for children while managing chronic illnesses, families one crisis away from homelessness. This one, Rebecca said, pointing to an application from a woman named Maria Rodriguez. She's working as a nursing assistant, which means she's helping other people all day, but she can't afford childcare for her own kids. She's been leaving her 10-year-old in charge of her 6-year-old. That's exactly the kind of situation where we can make a difference. Thomas read the application carefully. Approved. Let's get her set up with childcare assistance and see if we can help her get into an LPN program. Better job, better future. Rebecca made a note in the file. This was their 4th week of operation, and they had already helped 12 families. But she wanted to do more. Thomas, I've been thinking. What if we created a community center? A place where single parents could come for support, not just financial assistance, but emotional support too. Parenting classes, job workshops, maybe even counseling services. A place where they don't feel alone. Thomas looked up from the applications, his eyes bright with interest. That's a great idea. Where would we locate it? I was thinking somewhere in Dorchester or Roxbury, Rebecca said. Neighborhoods where the need is greatest. We could rent space in an existing building, or if you're feeling ambitious, we could buy a property and renovate it, but good jobs with benefits and room for growth. Childcare co-ops where parents can help watch each other's kids. Maybe even a food pantry stocked with healthy options, not just cheap fillers. I want to create a network of support that catches people before they fall as far as I did. Thomas smiled. Then that's what we'll build. Rebecca, I want you to know something. When I found Sophie in my pantry that day, I thought I was going to help you. But the truth is, you've helped me just as much. You've given me a reason to use my resources for something meaningful. You've reminded me that Caroline's death doesn't have to be the end of my purpose. It can be the beginning of something bigger. 6 months after Rebecca and Sophie moved into the guest house, Hope Rising Foundation opened its community center in Roxbury. The building was a renovated warehouse with bright red brick walls and large windows that flooded the space with natural light. Inside, there were rooms for classes and workshops, a children's area with toys and books, a computer lab, and a large community kitchen where families could learn to cook nutritious meals on a budget. The opening day was busy with families from across Boston coming to learn about the services offered. Rebecca stood near the entrance, greeting each person who walked through the door. She wore a professional blue dress and had her hair pulled back neatly, but her warm smile was the same one that had comforted Sophie through their darkest days. "Welcome to Hope Rising," she would say to each person. "We're here to help. Come in, look around, and let us know what you need." Thomas watched from the side of the room, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. On a table near him were pamphlets describing the center's programs, free childcare during job training courses, financial literacy classes, legal aid for families dealing with custody issues or landlord disputes, and the support group for single parents that Rebecca had envisioned. One of the first people to sign up for the support group was Maria Rodriguez, the nursing assistant whose application Rebecca had championed months earlier. The foundation had helped her with childcare costs and enrolled her in an LPN program. Now, Maria wanted to give back by sharing her story and supporting other parents. Sophie was there too, helping in the children's area. She read books to younger kids and helped them with art projects. At 9 years old now, she had grown more confident and outgoing. Her asthma was well controlled, and she had even joined the soccer team at school, something she never could have done before when a rescue inhaler was a luxury they couldn't always afford. During a quiet moment, Thomas found Rebecca standing in the community kitchen, looking around with satisfaction. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. Rebecca turned to him with a smile. "I was just thinking about how far we've come. A year ago, I was sneaking my daughter into your house, terrified we'd be caught, terrified of what would happen to us. Now look at this place. We're helping dozens of families every week." "It's going to be hundreds soon," Thomas said. "Word is spreading. I've already had calls from other cities asking about replicating the model." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Really? We could expand." "We could," Thomas confirmed. "But let's make sure this one is running smoothly first. Speaking of which, how is the support group going?" "Better than I hoped," Rebecca said. "We meet every Tuesday evening. Last week we had 15 parents show up. They share their struggles, they give each other advice, they babysit for each other. It's becoming a real community. Several of them have already found better jobs through the connections they made here." As they talked, Sophie ran up with a drawing she had made during the children's program. It showed the community center with people of all ages coming and going, all smiling. Above the building, she had drawn a sun with rays reaching down to touch everyone. "This is for the center," Sophie said. "Mrs. Patterson taught me about how art can tell stories about hope and community. I wanted to tell our story." Thomas took the drawing carefully, studying it with genuine appreciation. "This is beautiful, Sophie. We should frame it and hang it right at the entrance, so everyone who comes in can see it." Sophie beamed with pride. "Really? My art will be the first thing people see." "Absolutely," Thomas said. "It perfectly captures what this place is about." The following week, Sophie's drawing hung in the center's entrance, professionally framed. But something even more significant was about to happen. Sophie's art teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had submitted several of Sophie's paintings to a citywide youth art competition. When the results were announced, Sophie had won first place in her age category. The prize included a cash award of $1,000 and a feature in a local art magazine. When Sophie learned about her win, her first thought was not about what she could buy with the money. "Mom," she said seriously, "can we donate the money to Hope Rising? I want to help other kids who are hungry like I was." Rebecca hugged her daughter tightly, overwhelmed with pride and emotion. "Oh, sweetheart, that's very generous, but this is your prize money. You earned it with your talent and hard work." "But I had help," Sophie insisted. "Thomas bought me supplies and paid for my lessons. You work so hard at the center helping families. I want to help too. The money can buy food for kids who need it." Thomas, who had been standing nearby when Sophie made her announcement, knelt down to her level. "Sophie, that's one of the kindest things I've ever heard. But what if we do something even bigger? What if we match your donation? You give $1,000, and the foundation gives $1,000. $2,000 can help a lot of families." Sophie thought about this, then nodded decisively. "Okay, that's a good plan. But can we make sure some of it goes to buy art supplies for kids? Because art helped me feel better when things were bad. Maybe it can help other kids too." "Consider it done," Thomas said. "We'll create the Sophie Hayes Art Fund. Any child whose family is helped by Hope Rising can receive free art supplies and lessons if they're interested." The story of Sophie's donation made it into the local newspaper. The reporter who wrote the article interviewed Rebecca, Thomas, and Sophie, capturing their journey from desperation to purpose. The headline read, "From hiding in a pantry to helping others, how one girl's struggle became a city's hope." The article brought new attention to Hope Rising Foundation. Donations began pouring in from people inspired by their story. Local businesses offered to provide job training programs. Lawyers volunteered to help with legal aid services. The community was rallying around the cause. One evening, as Rebecca was locking up the center after a busy day, a woman approached her tentatively. She was thin, with tired eyes and worn clothes. Rebecca recognized the look immediately. "Are you Rebecca Hayes?" the woman asked. "The one from the newspaper article." "I am," Rebecca said gently. "Can I help you?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I read your story about how you were struggling and someone helped you. I'm in that same place right now. I've been living in my car with my 2 kids for the past month. I have a job, but I can't afford first and last month's rent anywhere. I saw your picture in the paper and looked up this place. Is it real? Can you really help people like me?" Rebecca stepped forward and gently touched the woman's arm. "Yes, it's real. And yes, we can help. Come inside. Let's talk about what you need." As she led the woman into the center, Rebecca felt the circle completing itself. She had been helped when she needed it most, and now she was in a position to extend that same help to others. This, she realized, was a true gift Thomas had given her. Not just financial security, but the opportunity to make a difference. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm over the past year and a half. Rebecca managed the community center with confidence and skill. Sophie continued to excel in school and art, and Thomas found fulfillment in watching the foundation's impact grow. Hope Rising had helped over 200 families find stability, and plans were underway to open a second location. But on a cold January morning, everything changed. Rebecca was at the community center when her cell phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made her answer anyway. "Is this Rebecca Hayes?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Daniel Hayes. Your husband." "Well, ex-husband, I guess. We were never officially divorced." Rebecca felt the blood drain from her face. Daniel, Sophie's father. The man who had walked out when their daughter was 2 years old and never looked back. She had not heard from him in over 7 years. "What do you want, Daniel?" Rebecca managed to keep her voice steady, though her hands were shaking. "I want to see my daughter," Daniel said. "I saw that article in the paper. Saw you hit the jackpot with some rich guy. My kid's face all over the news, talking about how great her life is now. I figure it's time I got back in the picture." Rebecca's mind raced. "You have no right to Sophie. You abandoned us. You never paid child support. You have no legal claim." "Actually, I do," Daniel said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "I'm still her father. And I've been talking to a lawyer. Unless you want a messy custody battle, I suggest we work something out. I'm thinking a nice lump sum payment would help me reconnect with my daughter. Say, $50,000. Rebecca understood immediately. This was not about Sophie. This was about money. Daniel had seen their story and saw an opportunity to cash in. "I'm not giving you anything," Rebecca said firmly. "Stay away from us, Daniel." "Then I'll see you in court," Daniel said, and the line went dead. Rebecca sat down heavily in her office chair, her heart pounding. After everything they had built, after all the progress they had made, this ghost from her past was threatening to destroy it all. Worse, she would have to tell Sophie about her father, about why he left, about why he was coming back now. That evening, Rebecca went to Thomas's study. He took one look at her face and immediately set aside his work. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Rebecca told him everything about the phone call. As she spoke, Thomas's expression grew darker. "His trying to extort you," Thomas said bluntly, "and his using Sophie as leverage. That's not just immoral, it might be illegal." "But what if he does have a legal claim?" Rebecca asked, voicing her deepest fear. "What if a judge thinks Sophie should have a relationship with her biological father? What if I lose custody?" Thomas stood and walked around his desk, sitting in the chair next to Rebecca. "You're not going to lose, Sophie. We're going to fight this the right way. Tomorrow, I'm calling Catherine Walsh, the best family law attorney in Boston. She'll know exactly how to handle this situation." "I can't afford a top attorney," Rebecca said quietly. "You don't need to," Thomas said. "This is what I'm here for." "Rebecca, you and Sophie are not facing this alone. We're going to protect her from this man who only sees her as a paycheck." Rebecca felt tears welling up. "I'm scared, Thomas. Not for me, but for Sophie. She's finally happy. She's thriving. What if this man turns her life upside down again?" Thomas took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Then we'll be there to catch her and set it right again. Trust me, Rebecca. We'll get through this." The next morning, they met with Catherine Walsh, a sharp woman in her 50s with a reputation for winning difficult custody cases. She listened to Rebecca's story carefully, taking detailed notes. "First, let's be clear about something," Catherine said when Rebecca finished. "This man has no moral claim to Sophie, and his legal claim is weak. He abandoned you both, never provided support, and now returns only because he sees financial opportunity. No judge will look favorably on that." "But he is a biological father," Rebecca said. "Doesn't that count for something?" "It counts for something, but not everything," Catherine explained. "Courts make custody decisions based on the best interests of the child. A father who abandoned his daughter and now returns demanding money is not acting in her best interests. However, he could try to establish visitation rights, which means we need to be prepared for a court battle." Thomas leaned forward. "What do we need to do to protect Sophie?" Catherine outlined a strategy. They would need to document everything about Rebecca's care for Sophie, gather character witnesses, show the stability Sophie had gained in the past year and a half, and demonstrate that Daniel's sudden interest was financially motivated rather than genuine concern for his daughter. "There's one thing we need to discuss," Catherine said, looking directly at Rebecca. "Sophie will likely need to testify, or at least speak with a court-appointed guardian who will assess what she wants. Are you prepared to have this conversation with her?" Rebecca felt her stomach clench. She doesn't remember her father. She was so young when he left. How do I explain this to her? "Honestly," Catherine said gently, "children are more resilient than we give them credit for. Tell her the truth. Tell her she's safe, and tell her that a lot of people are going to make sure she stays safe." That night, Rebecca sat on Sophie's bed while her daughter got ready for sleep. Sophie looked up at her mother, sensing something was wrong. "Mom, you've been worried all day. What's going on?" Rebecca took a deep breath. "Sophie, I need to talk to you about your father. Your biological father, Daniel." Sophie's brow furrowed. "I don't have a father. I mean, I know I must have had one, but he's not around." "He wasn't around," Rebecca corrected gently. "But he called yesterday. He saw the article about us in the newspaper, and now he wants to be part of your life." Sophie was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Why now? Where was he when we were sleeping in Miss Tina's apartment? Where was he when we were hungry? Rebecca's heart broke at the pragmatic wisdom in her daughter's question. "That's exactly right, sweetheart. He wasn't there when we needed him. And that's why we're going to have to go to court to make sure he doesn't disrupt your life now." "Court? Like on TV?" Sophie looked alarmed. "Will I have to talk to a judge?" "Maybe," Rebecca said honestly. "But Thomas has hired a really good lawyer to help us. And no matter what happens, you're safe. You're staying right here with me. Nothing is going to change that." Sophie was quiet for a long moment, then said something that surprised Rebecca. "Mom, I don't want to meet him. He left us. That was his choice. Now he doesn't get to just come back because things are better. That's not fair." Rebecca hugged her daughter tightly. "You're right, baby. It's not fair. But we're going to fight this together, and we're going to win." The court date was set for early March, giving Catherine Walsh 6 weeks to build their case. During that time, the community that Hope Rising had helped began to rally around Rebecca and Sophie in ways that amazed everyone. Maria Rodriguez, the nursing assistant who had become a leader in the parent support group, organized a letter-writing campaign. Dozens of parents wrote to the court about how Rebecca's work had helped them, about her character and dedication to helping families. Teachers from Sophie's school provided statements about her progress and well-being under Rebecca's care. Principal Anderson from Brookline Academy wrote a particularly powerful letter describing Sophie's transformation from a quiet, anxious child when she first enrolled to the confident, creative young girl she had become. Mrs. Patterson, Sophie's art teacher, provided examples of Sophie's artwork that showed themes of security, family, and home, demonstrating the positive environment she was growing up in. Even the families living in Rebecca's old neighborhood came forward. Ms. Tina, who had let them sleep on her couch, testified about Rebecca's struggles and her constant devotion to Sophie despite impossible circumstances. Thomas hired a private investigator to research Daniel Hayes. The findings were not surprising, but were valuable for the case. Daniel had a history of unstable employment, had been arrested twice for minor offenses, and had never attempted to contact or support Sophie in 7 years. Most tellingly, 2 weeks after calling Rebecca, he had been seen meeting with a tabloid reporter, trying to sell a story about Sophie's connection to Thomas Bennett. Catherine Walsh compiled all of this evidence into a comprehensive case file. The night before the court hearing, she met with Rebecca, Thomas, and Sophie at Thomas's house to prepare them for what would happen. The judge will be Patricia Morrison, Catherine explained. She's fair but tough. She doesn't tolerate nonsense, and she prioritizes the child's welfare above all else. Rebecca, you'll testify first. Tell your story honestly. Don't embellish. Don't get emotional if you can help it. Just facts. Rebecca nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Sophie, Catherine continued, turning to the young girl who sat between her mother and Thomas, you might be asked to speak with a guardian ad litem. That's a person the court assigns to represent your interests. They'll ask you questions about your life, your home, and how you feel about your father. You just tell the truth, okay? Sophie nodded solemnly. I can do that. I'm good at telling the truth. Thomas reached over and squeezed Sophie's shoulder reassuringly. You're good at lots of things. This is just one more. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and gray. Rebecca dressed carefully in a conservative navy suit, while Sophie wore a bright red dress that Thomas had bought her. As they entered the courthouse, Rebecca was surprised to see dozens of people from Hope Rising gathered outside in support. Maria Rodriguez stepped forward, handing Rebecca a folder. We all wanted to be here. We can't go into the courtroom, but we'll be right here waiting. You helped all of us. Now we're here for you. Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back. Thank you. All of you. This means everything. Inside the courtroom, Daniel Hayes sat at the plaintiff's table with a lawyer who looked barely out of law school. Daniel had put on weight and looked older than his years. When he saw Sophie, he attempted a smile that looked more like a grimace. Sophie moved closer to her mother and did not smile back. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, and everyone stood. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. This is a custody modification hearing, Judge Morrison began. Mr. Daniel Hayes is petitioning for visitation rights and partial custody of his minor daughter, Sophie Hayes. Ms. Rebecca Hayes is opposing this petition. Let's proceed. Daniel's lawyer went first, presenting a picture of a father who had made mistakes but now wanted to reconnect with his daughter. He glossed over the 7 years of absence and focused on Daniel's biological rights as a parent. Then Catherine Walsh stood for cross-examination. Mr. Hayes, when was the last time you saw your daughter before this month? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. It's been several years. 7 years, Catherine corrected. Sophie was 2 years old. She's now 9. In those 7 years, how much child support did you pay? I wasn't in a position to pay, Daniel muttered. So, $0. Did you send birthday cards? Christmas presents? Any communication at all? No, but I thought about her. You thought about her, Catherine repeated. Mr. Hayes, when did you first attempt to contact Ms. Hayes regarding Sophie? Last month. And when did you see the newspaper article about Sophie and her mother? Daniel's lawyer objected, but Judge Morrison overruled it. Answer the question, Mr. Hayes. The article came out a few weeks before I called, Daniel admitted. Interesting timing, Catherine said. And during that phone call, did you offer to pay back child support? Did you ask about Sophie's health, her school, her interests? I wanted to work things out with Rebecca. You demanded $50,000 in exchange for staying away from Sophie, Catherine said bluntly. That's extortion, Mr. Hayes. The hearing continued for hours. Rebecca testified about their struggles, about raising Sophie alone, about the stability they had finally found. She spoke calmly and clearly, presenting herself as the devoted mother she was. Thomas testified about hiring Rebecca, about finding Sophie hiding in his pantry, about the work they had done together to help other families. He explained that Sophie called him by his first name but considered him family. The most powerful moment came when Sophie met with the guardian ad litem, Dr. Sarachen, in the judge's chambers. Rebecca was allowed to wait outside with Catherine. "What do you think she'll say?" Rebecca whispered. "The truth," Catherine replied. "And the truth is on our side." After 30 minutes, Dr. Chen emerged and spoke privately with Judge Morrison. Then the judge called everyone back into the courtroom. Judge Morrison looked at the assembled parties with an expression that gave nothing away. Sophie sat between Rebecca and Thomas, holding both their hands. Daniel sat with his lawyer, looking less confident than he had at the start of the day. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented," Judge Morrison began. "I've read the letters from teachers, neighbors, and community members. I've spoken with Sophie through a guardian ad litem. This is not a complicated case, despite attempts to make it seem otherwise." She turned to look directly at Daniel. "Mr. Hayes, you abandoned your daughter when she was 2 years old. You provided no financial support. You made no attempt to maintain contact. By your own admission, you only reached out after learning that Sophie's mother had received help from a wealthy benefactor. Your actions suggest that your interest is in financial gain, not in Sophie's well-being." Daniel started to speak, but Judge Morrison held up her hand. "I'm not finished. The evidence shows that Sophie is thriving in her current environment. She's healthy, she's excelling in school, she has a stable home, and she's surrounded by people who genuinely care about her. Ms. Hayes has worked tirelessly to provide for her daughter, even during extremely difficult circumstances. She has also used her experience to help other families in need, demonstrating character and compassion." The judge paused, looking at Sophie. "I spoke with Sophie. She's a bright, articulate child who knows her own mind. She expressed clearly that she does not want a relationship with Mr. Hayes at this time. While I don't allow children to make final decisions in custody matters, I give significant weight to the preferences of a mature 9-year-old regarding her own life." Judge Morrison picked up her gavel. "Therefore, I am denying Mr. Hayes' petition for custody or visitation. Full custody remains with Ms. Rebecca Hayes. Furthermore, I am ordering Mr. Hayes to pay back child support for the past 7 years, calculated at the Massachusetts state guidelines, which amounts to approximately $70,000. This can be paid in installments, but payments must begin within 30 days. She looked at Daniel sternly. "Additionally, Mr. Hayes, I am granting a restraining order. You are to have no contact with Sophie Hayes or Rebecca Hayes except through official legal channels. Any violation will result in criminal charges. Do you understand?" Daniel's face had gone pale. "Yes, Your Honor." Finally, Judge Morrison said, turning to Rebecca, "Ms. Hayes, I commend you for the work you're doing at Hope Rising Foundation. You've turned your struggles into purpose. That's exactly what we need more of in this world. This case is closed." The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through the courtroom. For a moment, Rebecca sat frozen, not quite believing what she had heard. Then Catherine Walsh was hugging her, and Sophie was crying happy tears, and Thomas was smiling more broadly than she had ever seen. They walked out of the courtroom to find the Hope Rising community still waiting. When Maria saw their faces, she let out a whoop of joy, and soon everyone was celebrating. "We won," Rebecca said, her voice full of wonder. "We actually won." "You won because you deserve to win," Thomas said. "Because you're an excellent mother, and because Sophie is right where she belongs." Sophie tugged on Thomas's sleeve. "Can we go home now? I want to work on a new painting. I want to paint what winning feels like." Everyone laughed at that, and yes, they went home. But first, Rebecca turned to address the crowd of supporters who had stood with them. "Thank you," she said simply. "Each of you wrote letters, shared your stories, showed the court what this community means. You didn't just help me keep my daughter. You showed that when people come together, when they support each other, they can overcome anything. That's what Hope Rising is about. That's what we're building together." The crowd broke into applause, and Rebecca felt a fullness in her heart that she had never experienced before. This was not just about winning a court case. This was about belonging to something bigger than herself. Over the next few weeks, life returned to a new normal. Daniel began making child support payments, though Rebecca immediately directed the money into a college fund for Sophie. She wanted nothing from him except for him to stay away, which he did. The publicity from the court case, ironically, brought more attention to Hope Rising Foundation. Donations increased, and 2 other cities reached out about establishing similar programs. Rebecca found herself giving interviews, telling their story not to gain sympathy, but to inspire others to reach out for help when they needed it and to encourage those who could help to do so. One evening, about a month after the court decision, Thomas invited Rebecca to have dinner with him in the main house. Sophie was at a sleepover with friends from school, so Rebecca accepted, curious about what Thomas wanted to discuss. They ate in the dining room, a space Rebecca had cleaned hundreds of times but rarely occupied as a guest. Thomas had prepared the meal himself, simple pasta with vegetables, and they talked easily about the foundation's expansion plans. When dinner was finished, Thomas grew more serious. "Rebecca, there's something I need to talk to you about. Something important." Rebecca felt a flutter of nervousness. "Okay, what is it?" Thomas took a deep breath. "Over the past year and a half, you and Sophie have become family to me. Not employees, not charity cases, but actual family. Sophie fills a space in my heart that's been empty since Caroline died. And you, Rebecca, you've shown me that life can have purpose and meaning again." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I've been thinking about this for months, but I wanted to wait until after the court case was resolved. I want to formally adopt Sophie. With your permission, of course. I want to be her father, legally and officially. I want her to know that she'll always have someone to protect her, to support her dreams, to be there for her." Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face. "Thomas, that's beautiful. But are you sure? This is a huge commitment." "I've never been more sure of anything," Thomas said. "Sophie deserves a father who chooses her, who stays, who shows up. I want to be that person. But only if you're comfortable with it." Rebecca thought about everything Thomas had done for them, about how he had transformed their lives not just with money, but with genuine love and care. She thought about how Sophie's face lit up when Thomas came home each evening, about how she ran to tell him about her day, about how she had started calling him her bonus dad to her friends. "Yes," Rebecca said through her tears. "Yes, I think Sophie would love that. And so would I." The adoption process took 6 months to complete. During that time, Sophie was involved in every step, meeting with social workers and court officials who needed to ensure this was what she truly wanted. Each time, Sophie's answer was the same and clear. "Thomas has been my dad in every way that matters since the day he found me in the pantry," she told one social worker. "Making it official just means the rest of the world knows what we already know. We're family." The final adoption hearing was held on a sunny October morning, exactly 2 years after the day Thomas had discovered Sophie eating leftovers in his kitchen. The same Judge Morrison who had presided over the custody case smiled warmly as she reviewed the adoption papers. "This is the best kind of case," Judge Morrison said. "A case where everyone wins. Sophie, do you understand what this adoption means?" Sophie, now 10 years old and standing confidently before the judge, nodded. "It means Thomas will officially be my dad. It means my last name will be Bennett, and I'll be part of his family forever." "That's exactly right," Judge Morrison said. "And Thomas, do you promise to love, protect, and support Sophie as your daughter for the rest of your life?" "I do," Thomas said, his voice strong and clear. "It's the easiest promise I've ever made." Judge Morrison signed the papers with a flourish. "Then by the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I hereby grant this adoption. Sophie Hayes Bennett, congratulations on your new family." The courtroom erupted in applause. Rebecca hugged both Sophie and Thomas, and for a moment, the 3 of them stood together, a family made not by blood but by choice and love. The celebration afterward at Hope Rising Community Center was attended by over 100 people, all of whom had been touched by the Bennett family's journey. Sophie's artwork now hung throughout the center, bright and hopeful pieces that inspired everyone who saw them. But as the party wound down and guests began to leave, Thomas asked Rebecca and Sophie to wait for a moment. He led them to a quiet corner of the center's garden, where 3 benches had been arranged in a small circle. "I have one more thing," Thomas said, looking at Rebecca with an expression that made her heart skip. "Rebecca, these past 2 years have been the best of my life. You came into my world as an employee, became a partner in building something meaningful, and somewhere along the way, you became the person I think about first in the morning and last at night." He took her hand, and Sophie giggled with excitement beside them, clearly aware of what was coming. "You've shown me that family is not just about DNA or legal documents," Thomas continued. "It's about showing up, about choosing each other every day, about building a life together. Rebecca Hayes, will you marry me? Will you make this family complete?" Thomas pulled out a ring, a simple but elegant sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. Rebecca looked at the ring, then at Thomas, then at Sophie, who was bouncing with excitement. "Yes," Rebecca said, her voice full of joy and certainty. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They married 2 months later in a small ceremony at the community center, surrounded by the families they had helped and the friends they had made. Sophie served as maid of honor, wearing a bright green dress and carrying a bouquet of flowers she had helped arrange. Maria Rodriguez read a passage about love and second chances. Principal Anderson provided a reading about the importance of chosen family. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful, a celebration not just of 2 people joining their lives but of a family that had been forged through adversity and strengthened by grace. In the year that followed, Hope Rising Foundation expanded to 3 more cities. Rebecca became a sought-after speaker, sharing her story at conferences and fundraisers. Sophie's artwork was featured in a gallery show, with proceeds supporting the Foundation's art therapy program for children in crisis. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came on a Tuesday evening at the weekly parent support group. A new member, a young father who had recently lost his job and was struggling to keep his family housed and fed, shared his story with the group. "I feel like I'm failing," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm supposed to provide for my kids, and I can't. I don't know what to do." Rebecca, who was facilitating the meeting, looked at him with understanding and compassion. "I know exactly how you feel. I've been where you are. But here's what I learned. Asking for help isn't failing. It's surviving. And surviving is what we do until we can thrive." She looked around the room at the faces of parents who were fighting their own battles, supporting each other through the hardest moments of their lives. Every person in this room has struggled. Every person in this room has felt like they weren't enough. But we're here together, and that makes us stronger. We're going to help you through this. That's what this community does. The man nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you. I was so scared to come here, scared of being judged." "No judgment here," Maria added. "Just support. We've all needed help. Now we help each other." That night, after the meeting ended and everyone had left, Rebecca walked back to the main house where Thomas and Sophie were waiting. Through the window, she could see them in the kitchen, Thomas helping Sophie with homework, both of them laughing about something. She paused for a moment, taking in the scene. 2 years ago, she had been hiding in the shadows of this property, terrified and desperate. Now she was walking through the front door of her own home, to her husband and daughter, having spent the evening helping others find their way out of the darkness. The journey from that pantry to this moment had been long and difficult, but every step had been worth it. Because Rebecca had learned the most important lesson of all: kindness compounds. When someone helps you, and you use that help to help others, and they help others in turn, you create ripples of hope that spread far beyond what you can see. As she opened the door, Sophie looked up with a bright smile. "Mom, guess what? I got an A on my art project, and Thomas said we could go to the Science Museum this weekend." Rebecca hung up her coat and joined her family at the table, her heart full. "That sounds perfect," she said. "Absolutely perfect." And it was. Not because their lives were without challenges or difficulties, but because they faced everything together, with love, with purpose, and with the unshakable knowledge that kindness had the power to change everything. 3 years later, Hope Rising Foundation operated in 15 cities, helping thousands of families find stability and hope. Sophie was 13 and had received a full scholarship to a prestigious art program. Her paintings, which always featured bright colors and themes of love and community, sold for substantial amounts, with all proceeds going to support hungry children. Rebecca had published a book about her journey, titled From Hiding to Helping: How Unexpected Kindness Changed Everything. The book became a bestseller, inspiring countless readers to both seek help when they needed it and offer help when they could give it. Thomas had stepped back from most of his business ventures to focus full-time on the foundation. He had discovered that helping others gave him more satisfaction than any business deal ever had. One evening, the three of them sat in their garden, watching Sophie sketch a hummingbird that was visiting the flowers. "Do you remember that day?" Sophie asked suddenly. "The day you found me eating your sandwich." Thomas smiled. Every detail. It was the day everything changed. "I was so scared," Sophie said. "I thought you'd be angry. I thought we'd have to leave and we'd have nowhere to go." "I was never angry," Thomas said. "I was heartbroken that you were hungry and scared in my own house. But I was also given a gift that day. I was given a chance to make a difference, and that led to you both becoming my family." Rebecca reached over and squeezed his hand. "We were all given a gift. You gave us stability and hope. We gave you purpose and family. And together, we've given thousands of people a second chance." Sophie looked at her parents with wisdom beyond her years. "Mrs. Patterson says that art is about taking pain and turning it into beauty. I think that's what we did. We took the pain of being hungry and scared, and we turned it into hope rising. We turned it into helping people. That's the best kind of art." "You're absolutely right," Rebecca said, pulling her daughter close. "And you, my brilliant girl, are the masterpiece." As the sun set over Boston, casting long shadows across the garden, the Bennett family sat together in comfortable silence. They had traveled an impossible journey from that desperate day in the pantry to this moment of peace and purpose. Somewhere in the city, a single mother was walking into a Hope Rising community center for the first time, scared but hopeful. A volunteer would greet her warmly, offering help without judgment. A child would be given a meal and art supplies. A connection would be made. And the ripples of kindness would continue to spread. Because that was the real miracle. Not that Thomas had been wealthy enough to help. Not that Rebecca had been strong enough to accept help. Not even that Sophie had been brave enough to eat that sandwich despite her fear. The miracle was that kindness, once given and received, multiplied. It spread from person to person, from family to family, from community to community. And in a world that often felt cold and uncaring, that multiplication of kindness was enough to light up the darkness. The Bennett family had learned this truth through their own journey. We are all just one moment of kindness away from transformation. One sandwich. One offer of help. One person who cares enough to see the need and meet it. And that, more than anything else, was the legacy they hoped to leave behind.